All right, kids, gather around, gather around. Uncle Dave's going to tell you a story. For those of you who may not know, I wrote a book called The Effective Client. So let's hear one of the stories from the book. So here goes. I was in a meeting once where we were discussing a planting plan on a long linear stream project. My background is in civil engineering, so I'm often at a loss when asked to review planting plans. I know the difference between grass and shrubs and trees, but when it comes to individual species, I'm not the best person to make decisions. The design team was looking for our sign-off on the planting plan. I glanced at the plan for a few seconds and then said aloud, "I'm an engineer and I don't have any comments," and I sort of waved my hand over the plans as a sign of approval. But after a few moments of reflection, I changed my mind and decided I did have some questions. Because I know enough to know that vegetation density can affect flood hydraulics, so I wanted to know where they were planting shrubs and trees and how dense they would be along the creek. Here's where it got interesting. After I peppered the design team with questions for a few minutes, perhaps belaboring the discussion about the planting plan, a fellow engineer on the ownership team became visibly frustrated with me. He wasn't interested in discussing the particulars of the planting plan. After my third question, he threw his hands up in the air in frustration and made fun of my indecisiveness, somewhat harshly, in front of the whole team. Now, I have a close relationship with this person, so we freely give each other a hard time on occasion. But I glanced over at him and sarcastically said, "You doing all right? May I continue?" This didn't actually slow me down from asking further questions. I'm an extreme extrovert, but it did have an interesting consequence. After the meeting, a consultant who happens to be pretty introverted confided to me that he also had more questions about the planting plan, but he chose not to ask them after he saw how I was ridiculed. So even though it was one client giving another member of the ownership team a hard time, it still stifled any further discussion from the design team. The consultant didn't want to draw the ire of my fellow client too. So I hope you enjoyed that story. It's an example of how, as owners, we need to model the behavior that we want our teams to have. So if we want to have a really high trusting creative team, then we need to make it safe for people to bring up anything they want to without fear of ridicule, even of two other people ridiculing each other and not even you. I mean, it can just totally stifle people's creativity. There's a thing called psychological safety that I bring up in the book. And it's a big part of building trust on design teams. So if you found that story interesting and want to learn more, the book is available on Amazon, Kindle, and Audible, pretty much anywhere you shop for books. Hope you check it out.